Phil!
Are you listening? Damn.
So day one, thought for the day, just to fill you in before I get into this one, is since my heart attack, it's like you go through a lot of really strange emotions, real strange emotions. You are aware that you're not invincible and it really does change the way you see things. But on the flip side, it also eliminates fear. And I have found myself doing things that I probably wouldn't do normally, because after, I guess, facing a near-death experience, everything else kind of pales a little bit in comparison. And so I found a new confidence that I didn't have before. However, I was taken by surprise last night. I had to come to Hamilton just for a checkup and some tests and things like that, and we ended up not getting away from New Plymouth very early, and so we had to travel at night. And so we were in the van driving along, and I was passenger in the van, and all of a sudden I felt this fear grip me, and I was like, what the heck is going on? And what I realised is that nighttime, the travelling and just the sound of the engine in the van and stuff, it triggered the memory of my helicopter flight when I was having my heart attack. And then that set off the anxiety, and I just found myself struggling pretty much most of the trip from New Plymouth to Hamilton, because of this trigger, and because it had triggered off this fear or this memory that was in my mind of when I was having my heart attack travelling in the chopper at night. You know, this van ride took me so far out of my comfort zone, it wasn't even funny. And but my encouragement to you is, I guess not my encouragement, my thought for the day, is that a lot of us don't do what we want to do in life because of fear. So what I can gather is that there are two things that create this fear that stops us from doing things. Now, I'm no psychologist, so I don't know this for fact, but from what I can gather, there are two things. Number one could simply be that you're afraid to get out of your comfort zone. But one thing I learnt with my heart attack is that when I first had it, and I was... Look, who's this sneaking down? Hello, Judah. Saw you sneaking down there. When I had my heart attack, the first thing that I realised is that I was fearful to leave the hospital, because for me it was way out of my comfort zone, because if I left the hospital and had another heart attack, what would I do? The next thing... Hello, Ziva. So the next thing was, from leaving the hospital, was leaving Waikato, and each step that I took and towards removing myself from where I felt safe or where I felt comfortable, I started to get familiar with that uncomfortable place, and it became comfortable. So if you find that there's something you want to do but it's just going to take you way out of your comfort zone, my encouragement to you is step out, take that first step. Make yourself feel uncomfortable, because after a while that will actually become familiar, and you'll find a new confidence in doing something that you've always wanted to do. The second thing that I find that can cause these fears to stop you from doing things in your life is what I call triggers. So for example, for me, last night, the trigger was the sound of the engine humming away, and the fact that it was dark outside, and it was just a trigger. It took me right back to that memory of being in the helicopter. So if there's things that are in your life that you'd like to do, but you kind of go to step out, and there's kind of this sudden fear grips you, there's a good chance that there's probably some kind of trigger. So my encouragement to you there would be to think back to a time that could have caused you. So for example, if you wanted to be a singer and somebody said to you, oh, don't be so silly, you can't even sing properly. Remembering triggers, as I remember when I was at primary school. Now, I'm a terrible reader. I'm not a very good reader at all. I think my son's a better reader than me now. But the thing is, I remember going right through high school and never reading a book, and never wanting to read because I didn't feel like I was a good reader. But what happened is when I was in primary school, and I distinctly remember one day the teacher was calling all the kids up one by one to her desk to go through the reading book for the week. And it's just one of those little tiny reading books, with ducks and stuff in, and the duck jumped in the water, those kind of books. And I remember her putting her hand, I was reading a line in the book, and I remember her putting her hand over the next word and her asking me, what's the next word? And I said, I don't know, I haven't read that far yet. And she said, well, you don't know how to read properly. And from that point on, I never learnt to read properly. It put me right off. I have read a few books since now. But so that's basically how triggers work. I might do a video actually one day on how to hopefully eliminate triggers in your life. So my encouragement to you is if you're wanting to step out and do something new in life, work out, if it's just your comfort zone, take that first step, because eventually that uncomfortable place will become comfortable. If it's a trigger, or if you're unsure and it's just like this fear that stops you, think back to anything that may have happened in your life where somebody said something to you, or you found yourself in an embarrassing situation, or you've just had a go at something and failed, and you just, every time you put yourself in that position again, your mind is already set up to fail. So that's my first thought for my 12 days. Be encouraged, step out of your comfort zone, check for any triggers that are stopping you from moving into something you want to be doing, and live life to the full.